Imagine for a moment that you stand in a room full of people, laughter echoing, conversations flowing, everyone seemingly at ease. Yet inside yourself, you feel a quiet distance, a sense of being a witness rather than a participant. For many awakened souls, this is not an uncommon experience. They carry within them a depth of perception that most people are not even aware exists. They don't just see faces, they see masks. They don't just hear words. They hear the silence behind the words, the hidden fears, the subtle contradictions. And when you live with this kind of perception, it becomes almost impossible to settle for the ordinary games that most people call love. Love, as the world portrays it, is often built upon fleeting sparks of attraction, upon illusions that two people create together, convincing themselves that what they see is the whole truth. But the awakened soul cannot unseen what it sees. It cannot pretend that attraction alone is enough, or that affection, which depends on constant reassurance, is truly love. They see through the layers, through the neediness, through the unspoken contracts where one person says to another, "Make me whole, fill my emptiness, rescue me from myself." And when you see that so clearly, how can you give yourself to it? How can you pretend to play the game when the cards are transparent in your hands? This depth of awareness does not make the awakened soul superior, but it does make them different. They seek something raw, something real, something untouched by the performance of romance. They want to look into another's eyes and see not a mask, not a role, but the truth of their being. Yet most people are terrified of being seen in that way. They cling to their identities, their little stories, their carefully polished image of who they believe they are. And so, when someone comes along who pierces through that veil, it feels uncomfortable, even threatening. Many turn away, many retreat, because the intimacy an awakened soul longs for requires a level of vulnerability most are not willing to give. And so the awakened one often walks alone, not because they don't want love, but because they want love without pretense. They want the kind of love that does not demand you be anyone other than who you truly are. They want the kind of love that doesn't collapse when appearances fade, when youth slips away, when the spark of novelty dims. They want love that is rooted in the timeless, not in the temporary. But this desire, as noble as it may seem, creates distance. For in a world built on appearances, to seek the truth is to walk apart. Think of it this way. Most people fall in love with the idea of someone, not the reality. They fall in love with who they imagine the other person to be, and when reality surfaces, disappointment sets in. The awakened soul sees that from the beginning, they don't allow themselves to fall for the fantasy, and so the usual dance of love does not unfold. They pause, they question. They wait for something real, and that waiting can stretch into years, into lifetimes. For real love, in its rawness, is rare. And yet, this depth also creates a silent sorrow. Because while the awakened soul may cherish solitude, they are not immune to the longing for companionship. They too feel the ache of wanting to be understood, to be met soul to soul. But every time they try to meet others in that way, they find themselves standing on different ground. They speak of stillness, of silence, of presence. But the world is busy chasing pleasure, chasing status, chasing validation. There is a loneliness that comes from living in that kind of clarity. But here lies the paradox. The very depth that makes it difficult for them to find love is also the very thing that defines their beauty. Their refusal to settle, their unwillingness to participate in illusions is not a flaw. It is their strength. It is what allows them to preserve love in its purest form, even if it means living without it in the ways the world defines it. They may not always find someone who can meet them in that truth, but when they do, it is something extraordinary. For then, two awakened souls no longer stand apart. They dissolve into a union that is not based on need, but on freedom, not on illusion, but on truth. And so the awakened soul remains both blessed and burdened. Blessed with vision, burdened with isolation. Blessed with clarity, burdened with longing. Yet deep down, they know that love, in its truest form, is not something to be sought, not something to be forced, but something that arises when two beings dare to stand naked in their truth or love, as most people know it, is often tangled in threads of possession and attachment. We meet someone, and almost unconsciously we begin to weave expectations around them. We imagine how they should act, how they should speak, how they should remain by our side. And if they drift even slightly away from that imagined picture, we feel fear, we feel jealousy, we feel abandoned. This is the common pattern of love, a dance of desire and control. But for those who are awakened, the very heart of their being moves in another rhythm. Their soul longs for freedom. They know deeply that love which binds, love which clings, is not love at all. It is fear wearing the mask of affection. To live awake is to recognize that nothing in life can truly be possessed. You cannot own another person, not their body, not their heart, not their spirit. The awakened soul understands this, and so when confronted with the conventional model of love that demands ownership, they hesitate. They step back because they know what is being asked of them is not genuine intimacy, but a trade, a bargain that says, I will give you love as long as you stay exactly how I need you to be. And that bargain feels like a prison. This is the great paradox of awakened souls. They desire closeness, yet they fear the cage of attachment. They long for intimacy, yet they resist the chains that often come with it. They can cherish someone with great depth, but the moment love begins to smell of possession, they withdraw. They know that to truly love someone is to let them be free, to celebrate their independence, to allow them to move, to change, to grow. But most relationships are not built on that kind of freedom. They are built on the quiet demand that the other must not change too much, must not wander too far, must not upset the delicate balance of our expectations. So imagine the tension this creates inside the awakened one. They feel the warmth of love, they feel the beauty of connection, yet at the same time they feel the shadow of ownership creeping in. And they cannot ignore it. They cannot silence the awareness that whispers, if you give yourself completely here, will you still be free? Or will you be bound by invisible chains? And so they pull back, not because they don't love, but because they cannot betray the truth they see. In many ways, the world does not understand this. People mistake their hesitation for coldness, their distance for lack of care. But it is not that they do not care. It is that they care too deeply to corrupt love with chains. They know that real love cannot be forced, cannot be bargained for, cannot be contained. Real love flourishes only in freedom, only when both souls meet without the need to control. And yet, this devotion to freedom comes with a heavy price. Many awakened souls spend their lives torn between the longing to merge and the longing to remain untethered. They crave the sweetness of closeness, but each time it arises, they sense the shadow of attachment, and it unsettles them. The ordinary person finds comfort in attachment, in belonging to someone and having someone belong to them. But to the awakened one, this belonging feels like being trapped. It feels like a subtle form of death where individuality dissolves not into unity, but into dependence. You see, the awakened soul does not fear love. They fear the prison built in its name. They fear the silent contracts that lovers often write without words. The assumption that because I love you, I own you. That because you love me, you must behave according to my desires. And they cannot surrender to that, because they know that the moment love is tied down, it begins to die. Love, like a bird, cannot sing when it is caged. This is why their relationships are often fragile, why they struggle to remain in the conventional structures of romance. They are not searching for possession, they are searching for communion. They are not asking to hold you down, they are asking to dance beside you, freely, willingly, joyfully. And until they find someone who understands that love can exist without chains, they remain restless. It is a difficult truth, because the awakened soul is not immune to loneliness. They too feel the ache of wanting someone to walk beside them. But their devotion to freedom is so absolute that they would rather walk alone than be bound. And in this lies both their suffering and their beauty. They refuse to degrade love into ownership, even if it means their arms remain empty. The struggle between freedom and attachment is the eternal paradox of the awakened. For them, love can never be about holding, it can only be about allowing. And until the world learns to love in that way, they will always stand apart, yearning for a union that does not cage, a union that breathes with freedom. When two people come together, they do not only bring their bodies or their words, they bring their entire vibration, the frequency at which they live. You can feel it even without words. Walk into a room, and immediately you sense it. Someone heavy with anxiety, someone buzzing with restlessness, someone calm and at ease. Energy speaks before language does. And for those who are awakened, this is not a vague intuition. It is as clear as daylight. They sense the energy of another like a musician hears when an instrument is out of tune. And this sensitivity, while beautiful, makes it difficult for them to find love. Most of the world vibrates at a level shaped by fear, desire, insecurity, and distraction. People are caught in their ambitions, in their worries, in their endless chase for validation. Their energy reflects this, scattered, restless, sometimes heavy. The awakened soul, however, lives in a different rhythm. Their frequency is quieter, calmer, attuned to truth and presence. They do not carry the same frantic hunger, because they have seen through much of the illusion that drives it. And so, when they try to connect, there is often a mismatch. They extend their hand, but what they feel on the other side does not harmonize with their own depth. It is like trying to play a delicate piece of music with someone who only knows how to bang on the drums. Both may be musicians, both may love sound, but the harmony is missing. And without harmony, intimacy cannot unfold. The awakened one does not wish to judge or to feel superior, but they cannot deny what their being perceives. They feel the dissonance in their bones, and it unsettles them. This misalignment is not always obvious at first. Attraction may pull two people together. Shared interests may create laughter and joy. But in the quiet moments, when the masks fall and energy speaks more loudly than words, the awakened soul feels the gap. They feel how the other person is still tangled in illusions, still chasing shadows, still living at a pace that cannot rest in stillness. And this realization brings a gentle sorrow. For they know that no matter how much they care, the connection will not sustain itself unless both souls resonate on a similar frequency. To love someone deeply requires more than chemistry. it requires attunement. It requires that both people are willing to rest in presence, to see through illusions together, to hold silence without fear. But most people are not ready for that. Silence makes them anxious. Truth unsettles them. Stillness feels like emptiness. And so they run back into distraction, into drama, into the familiar noise that keeps them comfortable. But for the awakened soul, that noise feels unbearable. They would rather sit alone in silence than fill their life with the static of misaligned energy. This is why they often feel like strangers in the world of love. They do not reject others out of arrogance, but because they cannot force a harmony that isn't there. They cannot pretend to enjoy the music when every note feels dissonant. And so, while others may move easily from one relationship to another, the awakened one hesitates. They know that until the right resonance appears, giving themselves to someone will only lead to deeper loneliness. For there is nothing lonelier than being unseen by the one lying next to you. Yet this sensitivity is also their gift, because when they do meet someone who vibrates at the same depth, the connection is profound. Words become unnecessary. Their energies weave together effortlessly, like two instruments tuned to the same key. In such a union, love is not a struggle or a performance. It is simply the natural expression of harmony. That is why awakened souls are so cautious, so patient, so unwilling to compromise. They are not chasing perfection, they are waiting for resonance. But until that resonance is found, they carry a quiet ache. They walk through a world where most people's energy feels hurried, heavy, distracted. They long for that rare meeting where both souls stand present, awake, unafraid of silence. They are willing to wait, even if it means waiting a lifetime, because they know that forced connections will only drain them. Their hearts are too finely tuned to settle for noise. So when you see an awakened soul walking alone, do not assume they do not want love. They want it perhaps more deeply than anyone else. But they will not lower their vibration just to fit into a love that feels hollow. They would rather embrace solitude than abandon their truth. When most people speak of love, they speak of it as a private treasure, something to be kept between two people, bound tightly within the circle of me and you. Love becomes an agreement, a possession, a territory marked by intimacy and loyalty. But for those who have awakened, love is not so easily contained. They taste love not as a contract, but as an atmosphere, something that flows through everything, that belongs not to one person alone, but to the very fabric of existence. And this is where the difficulty arises. Because when you see love as universal, when you feel it radiating toward every being, the idea of narrowing it down to one exclusive arrangement can feel suffocating, incomplete, even dishonest. This does not mean the awakened soul is incapable of devotion. On the contrary, their capacity for love is immense. But their love does not stop at the border of a relationship. They love the stranger, the tree, the wind, the silence. They love not in fragments, but in wholeness. And when they enter into the usual forms of relationship, this vastness can be misunderstood. Their partner may ask, "If you love me, why does your love flow so freely toward others?" But the awakened one cannot help it, for they know that love is not a commodity to be divided and measured. It is the very essence of being. This is one of the most misunderstood qualities of awakened souls. The world expects them to pour their love into one vessel alone, to channel it exclusively toward a single person. But their heart does not work that way. To love only one and exclude the rest would feel like betrayal of what they know to be true. They cannot confine love to a narrow path when they feel it flowing like a river, endlessly through everything. And yet, this very expansiveness makes intimacy with one person difficult. Because most people want to be special, to be chosen above all else, to be the sole recipient of devotion. The awakened soul cannot play that game. Their love is too vast to shrink into exclusivity. And so they often appear detached, as if they are holding something back. But they are not withholding, they are overflowing. They are not refusing intimacy, they are refusing ownership. They are not cold. They are too full of warmth to lock it away for one person alone. But this fullness is so foreign to most people that it feels like distance. It feels as if the awakened one cannot commit, cannot give themselves completely. And in a way, this is true, not because they are unwilling, but because their love belongs to everyone and everything, not just to one. This universal love creates both beauty and struggle. Beauty, because it allows them to walk through the world with open arms, to see divinity in every face, to care deeply for all beings without prejudice. Struggle, because it leaves them misunderstood by those who long for the familiar kind of love, the kind that says, "You are mine, and I am yours, and no one else can touch this." The awakened soul cannot confine their heart in that way, and so relationships falter. It is not that they do not desire closeness. They do. They want the sweetness of sharing life with another, the intimacy of presence, the joy of companionship. But they want it without fences. They want it without the heavy weight of exclusivity. They want it without having to pretend that their love for the whole world must be shut down just to satisfy one bond. And so they are left in a paradox. They love too widely to fit into the narrow mold of traditional love. And yet they still ache for that deep human closeness which seems to demand it. This is why their love is often mistaken for detachment. To those who crave possession, their openness feels threatening. To those who demand exclusivity, their universal compassion feels like dilution. But in truth, their love is not weaker, it is stronger. It is not smaller, it is infinitely larger. They do not fall in love, they rise in love, and their love rises beyond the boundaries of the personal. Yet, because the world does not understand this, awakened souls walk a lonely path in matters of the heart. They may try to explain, but explanations rarely soothe the insecurities of others. They may try to compromise, but each compromise feels like a betrayal of what they know love truly is. And so, again and again, they find themselves caught in this tension, too expansive for the ordinary patterns of love, yet still longing to be met in the vastness of their heart.
There's something I've noticed about us human beings that I find absolutely